Welcome to SCPs with Steven, a series where I spin a wheel with 1,000 different SCPs listed on the SCP Wiki. It should be noted, these are not all of the SCPs that exist online. There are thousands more listed under its own series on the Wiki, which I will leave a link to below. Without further ado, let's give the wheel a spin.
SCP-091. SCP-091. Object Class: formerly anomalous. Currently safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-091 is to be stored in a standard containment locker at Site Redacted. When SCP-091 is not being tested, it is to be placed under combination lock. Since SCP-091 has shown no signs of resistance to tearing or damage greater than that of normal cardboard, great care should be taken when transporting it to and from testing sites. During testing, no one other than the subject should view SCP-091. Those suspected of having seen SCP-091 are to be administered Class B amnestics immediately, and all personal recordings or images in the possession of the subject, both print and digital, are to be destroyed to prevent recurrence. Description: SCP-091 is a Scotties brand tissue box, currently empty. Immediately upon observing SCP-091, viewers report an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. Those affected begin reminiscing about times they were near SCP-091, major events that occurred while it was present, or people and places that somehow relate to it. SCP-091 was originally recorded as an anomalous item and sent to Reliquary Site 44 until one of the members of the recovery team, Assistant Researcher Redacted, while viewing a recording of her wedding from sometime in the 1990s, noted SCP-091 in the background of the film, and noted a strong flood of nostalgic memories attached to it, including memories of SCP-091 at the wedding itself, memories of SCP-091 at the reception, and memories of SCP-091 during the honeymoon. A further interview with Assistant Researcher Redacted's ex-husband demonstrated that he too remembered SCP-091 in all of those places and situations, again, noting strong feelings of nostalgia and fondness for it. Further investigation found that several people who attended the wedding remember SCP-091 being there and the emotional effect. Others were asked to describe the wedding itself without being informed of SCP-091. In these cases, they described the scene without including SCP-091 until they were questioned about it directly. At that time, they immediately underwent the same previously observed effect. Continued testing under other situations has continued to produce similar results. Administration of amnestics has proven ineffective at stopping the effect if the subject is allowed to view an image or recording of SCP-091. Of note is the fact that in each recorded instance of SCP-091, the box pictured is full of tissues. So now is the part of the video where I give my thoughts on the SCP. I say whether or not I feel this is beneficial, detrimental, a bit of both, or mundane to society, and my personal thoughts on it. To start, I feel like this is honestly one of the more interesting SCPs we've discussed so far. I mean, we've had two kind of extreme SCPs with the scar tissue and the teleporting destroyer from episode 1 and 2. And then last week's episode, we had it on the brick that duplicates itself. But this one is interesting because it seems on the file here, previously it was classified as an anomalous object, and they are now saying that it's safe, which I can understand based off this description. I think right away the most interesting thing about this is what its effect does. It's nothing sinister, it's nothing, evil or bad, but it gives an overwhelming feeling of nostalgia. Now, when we think of nostalgia, we think of the good times we had as kids. Games we played when growing up, the sounds we would hear from nature, all those kinds of things. Stuff that reminds us of pleasant memories. That's essentially what nostalgia is. It's a feeling that you can't quite describe in words, as well as feeling it. And I think with this SCP it's interesting because of all the things it could be, it's a tissue box. Maybe the reason why this object has presented itself as a tissue box is because when people look back on nostalgic memories, sometimes it's very emotional because it reminds us of the times where we were in the moment and truly enjoying that moment. And I could see people getting emotional and even crying. So the fact that it's a tissue box, of all things, does not really surprise me. One thing I do find interesting is it says later on in the file here that when others were asked to describe the wedding itself without being informed of SCP-091, those specific cases, they described the scene of the wedding without including the SCP. But as soon as they were questioned about it directly, so directly mentioning that specific tissue box, the SCP, then the flooding of memories comes back. Which I can understand more so now why they classified this as anomalous, because you don't even have to see this thing to get the effect from it. Just somebody telling you about it can make these effects happen to you, or the effect of nostalgia. But it also describes that if you do specifically see it, or you're under the effects, that the administration of even amnestics is ineffective. And actually, while I'm reading this now, it says specifically, if the subject is allowed to view an image or recording of SCP-091, that is when the amnestics have proved ineffective. So seeing it is so potent that even amnestics, that are supposed to knock you out and take you out of it, don't override the feeling of nostalgia, the anomalous effect from this object, which I do find really interesting. Now, what do I think about it societal-wise? Is it beneficial? Is it detrimental? Or a bit of both? Or mundane? Personally, I don't think it's detrimental. This isn't really a bad thing. I could see it as potentially maybe not being all good, because if you were to see a picture of it, this effect would be on you for who knows how long. They actually don't specify how long the effect of nostalgia lasts. So if you see a picture of this thing, you could have this feeling of nostalgia potentially for life. Now, although nostalgia is great, having that feeling your entire life could potentially get in the way of you enjoying the moment in the present. So in that sense, I guess it could be a little detrimental, because you get so caught up on nostalgia that you forget about the present a little bit. And not even amnestics at that point can take you out of it. So people are probably not going to be able to take you out of it. But I also think that this could be good. I mean, imagine you brought this to a hospital, and there were some really, if there were people in the hospital that were really sick, and then you showed them a picture of this, it would fill them with a sense of nostalgia, and maybe that could improve, the overall morale of patients there. But again, if they have that, it might not go away. So it's interesting to think about it. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think of this SCP. Do you think having the effect of permanent nostalgia is a good thing, or a bad thing, or really doesn't matter? I think overall, with this SCP, it's not a bad thing. Nostalgia isn't inherently bad. For the last part of this episode, I'm going to classify what I think this object is. If I think it's safe, dangerous, or a bit of both. Overall, I would say this is safe, but I wouldn't say it's as safe as the last SCP, the multiplying brick. Because in that SCP, if you haven't seen that episode, I will make sure to leave a link to it in the video. But for that one, it doesn't have any negative effects if you see it or are near it, right? But this one, although it's not a negative effect, it's still an anomalous effect just by looking at it or seeing even a picture. So for that reason, I'm going to lean towards safe and safe with caution. Between those two, I would say this is safe with caution. So, although it is a safe SCP as a whole, it's not completely safe. And I think with that will bring us to a close on SCP-091. End of file.